Let's cut straight to it. Why is it so hard to follow through on what we say we want? Why do we set goals, make plans, and then abandon them halfway through? It's not about laziness or lack of ability, it goes much deeper than that. Baruch Spinoza, one of the most profound thinkers of all time, believed the answer lies in how we understand ourselves and the forces that shape our actions. Spinoza had a radical view of human behavior. He argued that we're not as free as we think we are. Most of the time, we believe we're in control, making rational choices. But Spinoza would say that our decisions are often driven by forces we don't fully understand: desires, emotions, and external pressures that push and pull us in different directions. This is why we fail to follow through. We're caught in a web of competing forces, and without clarity, we lose focus. To understand this, we need to start with Spinoza's idea of conatus. Conatus is the natural drive within every being to persist in its existence, to thrive, and to grow. For humans, this means seeking what we think will bring us joy or satisfaction and avoiding what causes pain. On the surface, this sounds simple. But here's where it gets complicated. What we think will bring us joy isn't always what's best for us. And often, the things we avoid, like effort, discomfort, or failure, are exactly what we need to grow. This creates a conflict. On one hand, our conatus pushes us to act. On the other, it makes us avoid anything that feels threatening or uncertain. This is why you might start a project with excitement, only to lose motivation when it gets hard. It's not that you don't care, it's that your mind starts associating the effort with discomfort, and your natural instinct is to avoid that discomfort.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Spinoza would argue that this isn't a moral failing, it's just how we're wired. But here's the key: he believed that we're capable of overcoming this instinct. The secret lies in understanding your emotions and desires, rather than letting them control you. Most of us act impulsively, chasing short-term pleasures or avoiding pain without really examining why. Spinoza called this being passive, letting external forces dictate your actions. The opposite of passivity is what Spinoza called being active. When you're active, you're aware of what's driving your behavior. You're not just reacting to emotions or circumstances, you're choosing how to respond based on a deeper understanding of your goals and values. This shift from passive to active living is where true freedom lies, and it's the first step to following through on what matters. Let's think about a practical example. Imagine you've set a goal to start exercising regularly. At first, you're motivated, but after a week or two, the excitement wears off. You wake up one morning feeling tired, and skipping the workout feels easier than pushing through. In that moment, your condition is pulling you in two directions: toward comfort and away from effort. If you're passive, you'll follow the path of least resistance. You might rationalize it: it's just one day, or I'll start again next week. But Spinoza would say this decision isn't fully yours. It's being shaped by fleeting emotions, like fatigue or a craving for comfort. To follow through, you need to become active. You need to step back, recognize the forces at play, and decide which ones align with your deeper goals. This is where Spinoza's concept of adequate ideas comes in. An adequate idea is a clear, accurate understanding of why you're doing something. It's not just a vague desire like I want to get fit. It's a deeper awareness of how this goal fits into your life, why it matters, and what it will require. When you have an adequate idea of your goal, you're less likely to be derailed by temporary setbacks or distractions. But how do you create adequate ideas? Spinoza believed that it starts with self-awareness. Most of the time, we act without fully understanding our own motivations. We set goals because they sound good or because we think they'll make us happy, without really questioning where those ideas come from. Spinoza would argue that to follow through, you need to dig deeper. What's driving your goal? Is it something you truly want, or is it shaped by external pressures, like societal expectations or the opinions of others? Think about a goal you've struggled to follow through on. What was your original motivation? Was it something that felt deeply meaningful, or was it more about impressing others or meeting an external standard? Spinoza's insight is that the clearer your motivation, the stronger your commitment will be. When your goal aligns with your true desires, it becomes easier to resist distractions and overcome challenges. But even with clear motivation, following through isn't easy. Spinoza recognized that emotions are incredibly powerful, often more so than reason. He believed that the key to managing emotions is understanding them. When you feel resistance, whether it's procrastination, fear, or frustration, ask what's behind it. Are you afraid of failing? Are you overwhelmed by the size of the task? By identifying the root cause, you can address it directly instead of letting it control you. This is where Spinoza's idea of joy becomes important. For Spinoza, joy isn't just about pleasure, it's about growth, expansion, and becoming more fully yourself. Every time you overcome a challenge, you experience a sense of joy because you've strengthened your conatus. This joy creates momentum, making it easier to keep going. So instead of avoiding discomfort, Spinoza would encourage you to see it as an opportunity. The struggle itself is part of what makes the goal meaningful. Let's wrap up this part with a question Spinoza might ask: are you living actively or passively? Are your choices driven by a clear understanding of your goals and values, or by fleeting emotions and external pressures? The difference isn't just about achieving more, it's about living with a sense of purpose and freedom. Let's focus on why we often lose momentum. Spinoza argued that the failure to follow through isn't just about a lack of willpower, it's about being caught between conflicting forces. Imagine you're trying to start a new habit or achieve a goal. One part of you is excited, driven by a vision of success. But another part resists, pulled by distractions, fear, or the comfort of staying where you are. This internal tug-of-war is exactly what Spinoza believed keeps us stuck. He identified emotions as the key players in this struggle. For Spinoza, emotions aren't just feelings, they're forces that drive us toward or away from action. He called these passions when they control us and actions when we control them. The difference lies in awareness. When you're unaware of what's influencing you, emotions take over, steering you without your input. But when you understand their source, you regain the ability to choose. Think about procrastination. It often comes disguised as something harmless: a quick scroll through social media, a sudden urge to clean your desk, or the thought that there's plenty of time later. These actions aren't random. Spinoza would say they're your mind's way of avoiding discomfort, fear of failure, uncertainty about where to start, or even the effort required to succeed. The problem isn't procrastination itself, it's the fact that we rarely question why we're doing it. This is where Spinoza's idea of adequate causes comes in. An adequate cause is a clear, rational understanding of why something happens. When you procrastinate, what's the real cause? Is it fear of not being good enough? Is it uncertainty about the first step? By identifying the true cause, you shift from being controlled by the emotion to actively managing it. This is the first step toward breaking the cycle. But awareness alone isn't enough. Spinoza believed that you need to replace the emotion driving procrastination with one that motivates action. This is where the concept of joy becomes powerful. For Spinoza, joy isn't just pleasure, it's the feeling of growth, of expanding your potential. When you focus on the joy that comes from progress, even small progress, it creates a positive feedback loop. You start to associate effort with satisfaction, making it easier to keep going. Let's make this practical. Think about a goal you've been avoiding. Instead of focusing on how far you have to go, focus on one small action you can take right now. It could be as simple as writing the first sentence of an email, taking out your workout clothes, or organizing one folder on your desktop. These small wins trigger a sense of accomplishment, creating the momentum you need to keep moving forward. Spinoza also believed in the power of reframing. When you face resistance, it's easy to see it as a problem or a sign that you're not cut out for the task. But what if resistance is just a signal that growth is happening? Spinoza would argue that discomfort is a sign you're challenging yourself, pushing beyond your current limits. Instead of avoiding it, learn to see it as evidence that you're on the right track. But how do you handle setbacks? Spinoza understood that failure is part of the process. He believed that what matters isn't avoiding failure, but how you respond to it. When you fail to follow through, the passive response is to feel guilt, frustration, or disappointment. These emotions often lead to giving up altogether. But the active response is different. Instead of dwelling on the failure, you analyze it. What happened? What can you adjust? This shift from self-judgment to problem-solving is what keeps you moving forward. Let's take a deeper look at motivation. Spinoza believed that external motivation, seeking approval, avoiding judgment, or chasing rewards can only take you so far. It's fleeting, dependent on factors outside your control. True motivation, he argued, comes from alignment with your inner desires and values. When your actions are driven by something deeply meaningful to you, they become self-sustaining. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something, whether it was a project, a hobby, or even a meaningful conversation. In those moments, effort didn't feel like work. It felt natural, almost effortless. That's the power of intrinsic motivation. Spinoza believed that when you align your actions with your authentic desires, you tap into a source of energy that can carry you through challenges. But aligning with your values requires clarity. Spinoza encouraged self-reflection, not as an abstract exercise, but as a practical tool. What truly matters to you? What kind of life do you want to create? When you're clear about your values, it becomes easier to filter out distractions and focus on what's important. This clarity isn't just motivational, it's liberating. It frees you from the pressure to follow paths that don't align with who you are. Finally, Spinoza believed in the power of connection. While following through on your goals is ultimately your responsibility, surrounding yourself with supportive people can amplify your efforts. When you share your aspirations with others who share your values, their encouragement and accountability can help keep you on track. But Spinoza would caution against relying too heavily on external validation. The goal isn't to seek approval, it's to find companions who inspire and challenge you. Let's focus on how Spinoza's philosophy translates into action. It's one thing to understand the reasons behind our struggles with follow-through, but turning that understanding into consistent habits and choices is what creates change. Spinoza believed that human beings thrive when their actions align with reason and purpose, and this alignment is the key to overcoming distractions, resistance, and inconsistency. start with habits. Spinoza saw human behavior as deeply tied to patterns. Much of what we do is automatic, shaped by past experiences and emotional reactions. If you've ever found yourself scrolling endlessly on your phone instead of working on a project, it's not just laziness, it's a habit, one reinforced by the immediate reward of distraction. Spinoza would argue that to change this, you don't just need willpower, you need to reprogram the patterns that drive your behavior. One way to do this is by reducing the friction between intention and action. Let's say you want to read more books, but find it hard to get started. Instead of relying on motivation, Spinoza would encourage you to create an environment where reading is the easiest choice. Put a book on your nightstand. Leave your phone in another room. Make the process effortless, and your behavior will begin to shift. But habits aren't just about ease, they're about meaning. Spinoza believed that actions driven by clear, intrinsic goals are far more sustainable than those driven by external rewards. If you're trying to build a habit, connect it to a deeper purpose. For example, reading isn't just about finishing a book, it's about gaining knowledge, growing as a person, or discovering new ideas. When you focus on that purpose, the habit becomes more rewarding, even when it's challenging. Now let's talk about overcoming resistance. Spinoza understood that resistance often stems from emotions like fear, doubt, or fatigue. These feelings are natural, but they don't have to dictate your actions. Spinoza believed that understanding your emotions gives you the power to redirect them. Instead of trying to suppress resistance, acknowledge it. What's the emotion behind it? What's triggering it? By naming the feeling, you reduce its power and create space for action. This is where Spinoza's idea of joy comes back into play. Joy, as Spinoza defined it, is the feeling of expanding your capabilities and becoming more fully yourself. When you focus on the growth that comes from effort, you shift the narrative around resistance. Instead of seeing challenges as obstacles, you see them as opportunities to build strength and resilience. This doesn't mean the resistance disappears, it means it becomes a sign that you're moving in the right direction. Think about a time when you faced a difficult task but pushed through and succeeded. That sense of accomplishment didn't come from avoiding discomfort, it came from leaning into it and coming out stronger. Spinoza believed that this process is at the heart of human flourishing. Growth isn't found in avoiding challenges, it's found in engaging with them. But growth also requires reflection. Spinoza encouraged people to regularly evaluate their actions, not to judge themselves but to learn. If you struggle to follow through, ask what's getting in the way. Is it a lack of clarity about your goal? Is it fear of failure? Or is it simply that you haven't built the right habits yet? The more you understand your patterns, the more control you gain over them. Spinoza also emphasized the importance of consistency. He believed that small, repeated actions have a cumulative effect, shaping who we are over time. This means that even small steps toward a goal matter. If you're trying to build a habit, don't focus on perfection. Focus on showing up, even if it's just for a few minutes. The act of showing up reinforces your commitment, making it easier to keep going. Now, let's address the issue of external pressures. Spinoza recognized that much of what we do is influenced by societal expectations, peer pressure, or the desire for approval. While these forces can motivate action, they can also pull you away from what truly matters to you. Spinoza would encourage you to regularly check in with your values. Are your actions aligned with what you care about, or are they shaped by what others expect of you? The more your actions reflect your own values, the more fulfilling and sustainable they'll be. But living according to your values requires courage. It means saying no to distractions and pressures that don't serve you. It means being willing to disappoint others at times in order to stay true to yourself. Spinoza believed that this kind of authenticity is the foundation of freedom. When you act according to your own principles, you're no longer controlled by external forces. You're in charge of your life. Finally, let's talk about resilience. Spinoza knew that no one follows through perfectly. There will be setbacks, distractions, and moments of doubt. But resilience isn't about avoiding failure, it's about how you respond to it. When you fall short, instead of giving up, Spinoza would encourage you to reflect, adjust, and try again. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of the process. Think of resilience like a muscle. Every time you choose to get back up after a setback, you strengthen it. And over time, this strength becomes your foundation. It's what allows you to keep going, even when things get tough. Spinoza believed that this resilience is what makes us human. It's not about being perfect, it's about being willing to grow. As we wrap up, let's bring everything together. Following through isn't just about achieving goals, it's about living a life of purpose and alignment. It's about understanding your emotions, building habits that reflect your values, and approaching challenges with a mindset of growth. Spinoza's insight is that when you align your actions with your true desires, you unlock a sense of freedom and joy that no external force can take away.